If Trump says we've won, why send more troops? In war, words matter. Declarations of victory, signals of peace, and decisions taken in the shadows of both. In recent days, former U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested that the United States has, in his words, won in its confrontation with Iran. But at the same time, reports indicate that additional American troops are being deployed to the region. So this raises a fundamental question. Backhand index pointing right. If victory has already been achieved, why prepare for more war? To understand this contradiction, we need to step back. The current conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran has unfolded rapidly, moving from targeted strikes to a broader regional escalation. Airstrikes have hit key Iranian cities, including Tehran, Isfahan, and Karaj. Iran, in response, has launched missiles across the region, targeting not only Israel but also Gulf countries such as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. The conflict has widened, and with it the stakes. What began as a shadow war, fought through cyber attacks, covert operations, and proxy militias, has now burst into open confrontation. For years, Iran and its adversaries engaged in a carefully calibrated dance of retaliation, each strike designed to send a message without provoking all-out war. But that unwritten rulebook appears to have been discarded. The strikes on Iranian soil are no longer limited to remote military bases or nuclear facilities. They have reached into the heart of the country's political and economic infrastructure. And Iran's response, once confined to targeting Israeli assets through its network of proxies, now includes direct missile barrages aimed at U.S. allies in the Gulf. This is no longer a contained conflict. It is a regional war by any practical definition. Amid this escalating situation, Donald Trump has made a bold claim. He has suggested that the United States has already achieved its objectives, that the operation has been successful, that effectively America has won. But what does that mean in practical terms? In modern warfare, victory is rarely as clear-cut as a single statement. It depends on strategic objectives, political outcomes, long-term stability, and most importantly, backhand index pointing right, whether the conflict is truly over. There is an old military axiom: you are not victorious until the enemy accepts defeat. And by that measure, there is little evidence that Iran considers itself beaten. Its leadership has vowed retaliation. Its military infrastructure, though damaged, remains operational. Its regional proxies continue to pose a threat. So what exactly has been won? The answer may lie less in military reality and more in domestic political messaging. For a leader facing a divided electorate and an aggressive political opposition, declaring victory serves a purpose that transcends the battlefield. It is a tool of narrative control. It tells the American people that the crisis is behind them, that the administration's actions have been decisive, and that there is no need for further anxiety. But whether that narrative holds in the face of continued deployments and ongoing hostilities is another matter entirely. Because while victory is being declared, troops are still being sent. Additional U.S. forces, some elite units, are reportedly moving into the region. This includes airborne divisions, naval assets, defensive systems. These are not the actions of a country that believes the situation is fully resolved. Instead, they suggest preparation. Preparation for what? That is the central question. It is worth noting the nature of the forces being deployed. Airborne divisions are not typically sent to a region where the fighting is over. They are sent to a region where the fighting may be about to begin or expand. Naval assets, particularly Aegis destroyers equipped with ballistic missile defense capabilities, are not deployed for peacetime patrols in a calm sea. They are deployed to intercept incoming missiles. Defensive systems like the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense or THAAD are not installed in countries that are considered safe. They are installed in countries bracing for attack. The message from the Pentagon is clear. The threat has not diminished. If anything, it has grown. One explanation is deterrence. Even after a military success, a country may increase its presence to prevent retaliation. In this case, Iran still retains significant military capabilities. Proxy groups remain active. Regional tensions are high. By deploying more troops, the United States may be signaling, backhand index pointing right, do not escalate further. This is not uncommon. In fact, in many conflicts, a show of strength is used to maintain peace, at least temporarily. Deterrence operates on a simple psychological principle. Convince your adversary that the cost of attacking is higher than any possible gain. But deterrence is also fragile. It requires constant reinforcement. A single perceived weakness, a moment of hesitation, a contradictory statement from a political leader. Any of these can unravel years of carefully constructed military posturing. The additional troops in this reading are not a preparation for new offensives. They are an insurance policy against Iranian miscalculation. Another possibility is that the objectives of the conflict have not been fully achieved. While leadership may claim success, the reality on the ground may be more complex. Questions remain. Has Iran's military capability been significantly reduced? Has its nuclear program been neutralized? Has regional stability been restored? If the answer to any of these is no, then the deployment of more troops may indicate that the mission is still ongoing. Consider the nuclear question. For years, the stated goal of both U.S. and Israeli policy has been to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. Airstrikes against nuclear facilities can set the program back, sometimes by years, but they do not eliminate it. The knowledge remains. The centrifuges can be rebuilt. The underground facilities can be hardened. If the objective was truly to end the nuclear threat, then a single round of strikes is rarely sufficient. It is the beginning of a sustained campaign, not its conclusion. Similarly, Iran's regional influence has not evaporated. Its proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen remain armed and operational. Its ability to disrupt global shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has not been diminished. If the objective was to restore regional stability, then that objective remains unmet. The risk, of course, is that additional troop deployments can themselves contribute to escalation. More troops can mean greater military readiness, faster response capability, increased chance of confrontation. In a region already on edge, even small incidents can have significant consequences. A drone shot down over international waters. A naval vessel that strays too close to another's territorial waters. A cyber attack that inadvertently hits civilian infrastructure. Any of these, in the current climate, could become the spark that ignites a broader war. The presence of additional American forces does not reduce that risk. In some ways, it increases it. More assets mean more targets. More targets mean more opportunities for miscalculation. This is the paradox of escalation. The measures taken to deter war can also make war more likely. The situation also has broader implications. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical shipping routes, remains under pressure. Oil markets are sensitive. Global supply chains are affected. Every military decision has economic consequences. And every additional troop movement sends a signal not just to Iran but to the world. When oil prices spike, the cost is felt far beyond the region. European economies already struggling with inflation face higher energy costs. Developing nations already burdened by debt find their import bills rising. And the global shipping industry, still recovering from the disruptions of recent years, must navigate waters that have become increasingly dangerous. This is no longer a regional conflict. It is a global one with global consequences. Within policy circles, there is no single, unified view. Some argue that backhand index pointing right strength prevents further conflict. They point to historical examples where a decisive show of force compelled an adversary to back down. They argue that hesitation, not aggression, is what invites attack. Others warn that backhand index pointing right continued military buildup risks prolonging the war. They note that every deployment is interpreted by Iran as a provocation, and that each provocation invites a response. They argue that the path to peace lies not in more troops, but in more diplomacy. This debate reflects a deeper uncertainty. Is the conflict ending, or entering a new phase? Amid strategic discussions, it is easy to lose sight of the human cost. Lives have already been lost. Families affected, communities disrupted. For those on the ground, the distinction between victory and ongoing conflict is not theoretical. It is real. and it is immediate. For a family in Tel Aviv, the sound of an air raid siren is not a geopolitical event. It is fear. For a family in Tehran, the rumble of distant explosions is not a strategic calculation. It is uncertainty. For the families of American service members being deployed to the region, the question of whether the war is over is not a matter of political rhetoric. It is a matter of whether their loved ones will come home. So we return to the central question. Backhand index pointing right if victory has been achieved. Why send more troops? Because either the victory is incomplete, the situation remains unstable, or the definition of winning itself is unclear. Perhaps it is all three. Perhaps the declaration of victory is not a reflection of reality, but an attempt to shape it. A political move designed to close one chapter, while the military quietly prepares for the next. A message to the American people that the worst is behind them, even as planners in the Pentagon assume the worst is yet to come. Looking ahead, several scenarios are possible. 1. Troop presence deters further conflict. Diplomatic efforts gain momentum. The situation gradually de-escalates. This is the optimistic scenario. It assumes that both sides recognize the dangers of further escalation and find a way to step back from the brink. It assumes that the additional troops serve their intended purpose of deterrence, and that back-channel negotiations produce a framework for de-escalation. 2. Low-level conflict persists. Military presence remains high. No clear resolution is reached. This is the most likely scenario. It assumes that neither side can claim a decisive victory, and that both remain locked in a protracted contest of wills. It assumes that the conflict becomes a permanent feature of the regional landscape, neither war nor peace, but something in between. 3. Further escalation. New incidents trigger wider confrontation. Additional forces are deployed. The conflict expands further. This is the worst-case scenario. It assumes that the current trajectory continues, that miscalculations accumulate, and that the region slides into a full-scale war. It assumes that the additional troops, intended to deter conflict, instead become the catalyst for it. In modern warfare, victory is rarely a single moment. It is a process, a negotiation between military outcomes, political goals, and strategic realities. Declarations of success may come early, but stability often comes much later, and sometimes, not at all. What we are witnessing may not be the end of the conflict, but rather a shift in its nature. From open warfare to a new phase of tension, from the battlefield to the negotiating table, or perhaps to a deeper, more dangerous form of confrontation. Studio microphone. Closing line. So when a leader says, "We've won," it is worth asking, backhand index pointing right, what exactly has been won? And perhaps more importantly, backhand index pointing right, what still remains unresolved? This is a story that continues to unfold. And as it does, the gap between words and actions may tell us more than either alone.